Welcome to the Red Text,
a crossroads of the holy and heretical.
Join us now for another episode in Unholy Communion.
Welcome back to another episode of the Red Text podcast. I'm your co-host Ryan, aka the Mestizo Mystic.
And my name is Fonzie. I am Witch Illumisente on Instagram and Twitter. Oh my god, I can't, I'm getting so excited. I need to calm the fuck down every single goddamn time. Ryan, there's something very special about this episode. Can you tell us what's very special about this episode?
Yes, I recently had the pleasure and honor of being interviewed by our guest, who is Olivia, aka the Witch of Wonderlust. And I'm so excited about today's topic too, because I feel like it's not something that's approached so much in the general spiritual Instagram community. So I'm so excited to talk about what we're talking about today, which is with death work, death magic. And I'm excited to hear a lot of your practice, Olivia, because I personally don't touch or deal with a lot of dead things yet. But I do work with the death spirit, and so I definitely understand the currents and the energies of that. So happy to have you here, Olivia. And also, again, thank you so much for having me interviewed by you. That was such a wonderful experience. So I know this is going to be just as, if not more wonderful than our interview was.
Yeah, you were fantastic to have on my channel. So thank you for coming on, and also thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Well, first of all, before we go into anything nitty gritty, let's just get to do a little check-in. Let's start with our guest, Olivia. How are you doing? How are things? You were very open and transparent that recently you had a surgery. So I know that you recovered well and you're basically back to normal. So how are things other than that? How's your life just in general?
You know, I'm pretty fucking happy right now, to be completely honest. Which, I'm not gonna be upset about saying. So yeah, I got my surgery. For those of you who don't know, I recently had my tubes removed, so I no longer have tubes connecting my ovaries to my uterus, and it's a permanent birth control. I've been wanting it forever, and I'm just stoked that it finally happened. I recovered in 2 weeks. Actually, today is the exact mark of 2 weeks, so that's cool. I've got a lot of shows happening for pole and for dance, and that's actually in 2 days from now of recording this. It's this Friday. I get to watch a lot of my students progress and them perform for the first time. And I've got a lot of interesting stuff that I'm hoping I can get up by the end of this year. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm working on. How are you guys?
Ryan, you can go first. How are you?
Sure. I'm good, bittersweet. I just got back from visiting my partner in Portland. I was there for about a week and a half. I just flew back into San Francisco last night. I just missed the heat wave. Apparently it was over 100 degrees in SF yesterday, which is I think it was the record temperature ever. And it was even hot today. I just went for a stroll around the block and this bitch was just so wetting. But it feels good to be home. Sad to be alone. But, also grad school's going great, stressful, lots of cool stuff, but lots of just homework and readings and things like that. But it's so cool to psychoanalyze shit now. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just seeing my partner, dealing with school. Other than that, no big projects, nothing else really. Just trying to live my life. But how are you doing, Fonzie?
Oh my gosh. Every single time Ryan goes to Portland, I was okay, I have to make a mental note in my head. And it's okay, they're going to be in Portland from this day to this day. So don't fucking bother them, please. Because I know they're going to be so sad when they leave. So don't fucking, so I try really, really hard not to bother you while you're away with your partner. But I'm very happy to see your fucking face again. And also happy that you can relate to me because it was 113 degrees 2 days ago here. This heat wave is not fucking it's not it, sis.
I'm not built for the heat. Anything over 75 degrees, no.
Yeah, 75 degrees, 80 if I'm wanting a hot summer day. Anything past that, I'm already pissed off if it's hot out. I'm I don't need this. The sun needs to go away. No.
And you know what makes me so it's so annoying is that when this episode is released, it's going to be so beautiful and so nice. Like, it's going to be so crisp and so cold and so lovely. And it's just going to make sense for my wardrobe again. And it's just like, I know I'm going to be listening back to this episode being like, oh God, I wish I was here right now. You know what I mean? But anyways, other than the heat, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. It's interesting when I was just today getting ready to record this episode, because this episode is not just special because Olivia is here. This episode is also the finale of this first season of our podcast, which we actually didn't mention yet, but it is the last episode of this season. And I don't know, I was just feeling kind of sad and also really fucking happy, because I was like looking at myself on my Instagram today from my like recent posts and from like my first post, and I was like, that's so fucking crazy how quickly things change for just from being on like just having this online presence, because like I'm just so much more I'm looking at myself so much more often, I guess. So it's just like I don't know, I'm like hyper focused on myself, and I'm just starting to like really love my face again, and I'm starting and like loving my voice. Like Ryan knew at the beginning of the podcast when we started this, I couldn't stand the sound of my fucking voice. Like, it was awful. It was so terrible. But I don't know, I'm just so incredibly grateful. I don't know, that's just how I'm feeling
Good.
right now.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're becoming a Leo with just loving your face and looking at yourself, because that's just me every day.
Well, it shifts, so I'm still very airy, because tomorrow I'm probably gonna wake up and just like, what the fuck were you thinking? What were you doing? That's very much the wrong color for your, it wavers. But I'm doing wonderful, and I'm just so happy and so excited of what's to come for the both of us, for all three of us, for the podcast, for just things are coming. And also at this time, I promised my followers on Instagram that once I reach 1,000 followers, I'm going to launch my YouTube. I'm almost there.
Ooh, I'm excited for that. Join me.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, I'm nervous, but I'm also very excited. I talked to Olivia for a little bit about this, and it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews. That's one of the things that I really want to do, is trying to incorporate a lot of interviews with the people that I know here in Los Angeles, and then hopefully branching out to other people around the country and doing like an interview-based show where I interview witches, because I think that's what I'm good at. I don't know. So we'll see. Olivia might be on it. We'll see. Ryan's
I hope so. I look forward to it.
Yeah. I think that's there are beautiful things coming, and then also the podcast is gonna get a whole rework. It's gonna be a revamp. It's gonna be so cunt. I am so excited for everyone to see the things that we're coming to you with in this podcast. Okay, so Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, well, Olivia, for those who may not be aware of you and your work and your content and what you put out, could you give us a brief little description of you, your practice, and your background before we specifically dive deeper into the specifics of death work and death magic?
Oh, and your pronouns too, please.
Oh, of course, yeah. So my pronouns are she, her, and my background as a practitioner is a lot less interesting than people might think. Unfortunately, I came from a Christian household. My dad is Filipino and an immigrant, and came from a very Catholic-based religion and just practice, and so I saw a lot of that growing up, and so a lot of that still resonates and still has aspects in my practice now, but much less than I think a lot of people who come from that background do. I have always had a very deep connection with death, whatever that may ring to you, dear listener, but yeah, there's just something about death. I think that is the only constant in my life. That sounds very Victorian and dark and Poe, but
it's beautiful.
It's true, it's just one of those things that taught me a lot, and I think that if death didn't show up so early in my life, I would be a very, very, very different person, and I don't think that I would be nearly as happy as I am. My practice itself is I don't really have a definition for it. I suppose you could say a folk practitioner. I don't really follow any sort of set rules or system. I just kind of fuck around and find out and try out different things and see what works. And I like to experiment, and I work a lot with actual death. So I work with like roadkill, and I do a lot of taxidermy and bug pinning and bone collecting and things of that sort, which we call vulture culture in the internets. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
When did you start working with death in that aspect, in terms of like carcasses, animals, pinning things? Like when did that come up? How did that arise?
Well, I've always really liked bugs when I was a kid. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing now as a YouTuber and a pole instructor, I think I would have gone into like entomology, because I just absolutely adore insects. I just think they're really fucking cool and really important. And I've always collected them as a kid. I always thought they were interesting. So I always had like little jars of just dead insects, or I would keep them as pets. And then I learned how to pin them, and you can kind of set them up in kind of an artsy way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took me a little longer, obviously, to pick up animal parts that were not straight up bones, because if there's rotting flesh, that's a little more difficult to deal with, especially if you're still living with parents as a kid or as a teenager. And then same thing with roommates. So that took a little longer, but I would say that happened maybe in the last 5 years. So I would say still pretty recent.
That's beautiful. How do you work with those aspects of what just started out kind of like as an interest? Like, how do you work with those and incorporate those magically in your practice?
Ooh, a lot of it's actually more, I guess it is a part of my practice, because a lot of it goes into almost honoring that animal. And especially if it's a new animal that I've picked up, or it's a bone that I don't recognize, I try to do my best to research to figure out where it came from and who it belongs to, and then kind of deep dive in both the mundane and the magical connections of that animal or that insect. And you'd be surprised what you can find and how connected you become with your land when you start kind of just picking up the dead. And that as well, I'm a frequent cemetery visitor. I really like those. I think they're much less chaotic than parks. So I enjoy spending time there a little more often. But even that, like you can just kind of hang out, and I feel like even that has a lot of gateways of connecting with the dead, and not even just like spirits, but just the energy of death, and a better understanding and a better perspective on death in a lot of different ways. Makes you ponder.
I love that, because I think getting comfortable with death is very important, especially if you are a practitioner and you are working within the realms of magic, because death is a very earthly thing to experience. And especially because, okay, I think a lot of it is because of like our religious trauma and our conditioning, is that we're taught to be scared of death, especially growing up Christian, because I grew up Christian, I grew up Protestant, where death is the enemy, right? Jesus conquered death. So people are never really comfortable with death, or the idea of death that makes them feel uncomfortable. Now, speaking from me personally, I grew up as someone who was
just fire hazard. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Please practice fire safety. We've talked about this before.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you like that.
No, you're fine. I please interrupt me anytime there's a fire hazard. Please do.
Anyway, please continue.
No, that's so like for me personally, growing up as this little spooky goth kid, I was kind of always very intrigued with death. I always saw the beauty in death. I always saw I also saw the beauty in the color of death, right? I also I know this sounds very, very strange, but like the Saws and the Freddy Kruegers and the just that visual that visual was always very attractive to me. My mom used to tell me that when I was a child, do you guys, I've mentioned this to Ryan before, but Olivia, do you know what Tales from the Crypt is?
That sounds so familiar. I feel like I should.
It was an old 90s TV show it's structured a lot like the Twilight Zone, but it's all horror. So,
Okay.
and there was a crypt keeper that kind of looked like,
Oh, yes. Wow, you just unlocked like yeah, core memory hit.
right,
Thank
there
you.
we go. Okay. That's I
Yes,
love
no,
that. I saw it in your eyes too. It was just like, "Wah."
Yeah, just flashed.
It was like kind of like that's so Raven kind of like premonition thing. But yeah, so I used to watch that show, and my mom said I loved watching it, but I would like cover my ears because like the sound scared me. So I would watch this show. So the aspect of like kind of darkness and like dwelling in the dark or horror or gore was always very visually beautiful to me growing up. And then it wasn't until recently when I started practicing folk Catholicism, how prominent death is in so many people's lives, and they just don't address it. They know it exists. They just don't directly say death. Because we've said this before, especially in our saints episode, that working with saints is necromancy, because saints were people who passed away and now are canonized by the church as folks to venerate, and they actually help us in our magic. And then so death, and then also walk into a church and the first thing you're going to see is a dead guy on a cross.
Yep.
So just praying to Jesus is necromancy. That gonna get me in trouble? I don't care. It's true. So
It's your podcast. Say what you want.
You're about to get a knock on the door right now in 30 seconds from the Pope
from the
himself,
church.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, excuse me.
But you know what I mean? So death is very prominent, especially in a church. Like literally, death is literally all around you. So being comfortable with death and just kind of saying hi to it and being, building a relationship with the idea of death is something that I think is pretty integral in a witch's life. You don't actually, I don't believe that it's necessary. Now you can disagree with me and we can actually have a discussion. I don't think it's actually necessary for you to pick up, dead things off the road and clean it and do those and, work with the carcasses and work with the bones and but like Ryan works with the spirit of death, right? The patron saint of death. That is death work, right? Working with your ancestors. That is death work. So yeah, I think the idea of death is important when working within the aspects of witchcraft, because trafficking with spirits is, the foundations of what we do.
Yes, 100%. Well, I agree with you that you definitely do not need to go pick up roadkill and, carry a roadkill box in your car like somebody that is totally not me. Because, that's not for everyone. I totally understand that. It's a gruesome task. It's definitely a very niche hobby, if that's what you want to call it. But I do think that it is important to expose yourself to the realities of physical death, just because, especially if you're an American, I think Western culture tries so hard to hide death, as if to try to prolong our lives at any cost and hide death at any cost, and just make sure to make us believe that we are immortal, right? To kind of give us that facade instead of have us accept that we all die, whether that's from something else or old age. And you see this all the time in like hospitals, or even funeral homes. When they have open caskets, it's like they make the person look still alive for a viewing, which obviously I understand reasons, but it doesn't help the narrative that we don't live forever. And I think that's one of the things that we just ignore. Like, we all know it, but we just ignore instead of actually face it and sit down and think about it, because death is a terrifying thing. Like, we have no idea what's on the other side. whether you believe something 100% or not, in reality, we have absolutely no proof and no idea what actually happens when we die. And that's terrifying, and that's totally understandable why that's terrifying. But to sit down and actually ponder it, I think is really important, to just accept the fact that, yeah, you can be afraid of death. That's allowed, of course, but to accept the fact that it does come. And I think one of my favorite quotes that one of my teachers gave me was, "Not even the gods can escape death." And that sat with me forever and probably always will, because it was the idea that the last time somebody speaks your name or thinks about you, you truly die.
Mm-hmm.
So that can happen with gods, right? That can happen with deities, spirits, anything and anyone. And so that itself, it's just one day, everything will die. And it's a weird, terrifying thought, but then when you kind of sit on it enough, it's comforting, I think, personally.
It is. I think it helps with like releasing that attachment to just everything you're comfortable with, like realizing everything's gonna have its end. So why feel so attached to these things? Even just like the Buddhist concept of attachment, like you're not going to find peace if you're constantly attached to your relationships, to material items. Like everything is going to meet its end at one point or another. So relish it, but don't think you're going to be attached to that thing forever, because there's no such thing as forever.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, I do think that death work is kind of a staple. It doesn't have to be something that your practice or your life or your thoughts revolve around, but I do think that it's something that everybody at some point should really sit down and ponder, like seriously, not just for like a day or two, but I mean like really, really think about it. One of the things that I just see the spirit, the energy of death in my life, not even as a magical practice all the time, is I have always been like one of the worst case scenario thinkers. It's probably from trauma, let's be honest, but at the end of the day, I have realized that I just have become so incredibly nostalgic and grateful for the relationships in my life and what they truly mean and do for me, and the moments that I know that I'll never get back. So because it like I have a lot of people in my life who are first responders or who have very dangerous jobs, and even if they don't, I've had so many strange instances in my life that you just don't know what's going to happen next. You truly don't. So it's one of those things that you have no idea what's going to come next, and you just kind of have to relish in that moment. It's become something that has made me so incredibly mindful, and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that death has done for me, is that I don't waste my fucking time with anything or anyone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I relish in the relationships and the moments that I know that I'm experiencing now and I will never experience again.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not giving a shit and not wasting your time with people that don't matter in your life.
Yeah.
That's so fucking punk. So do that.
It's incredible, and it's freeing, and it's very nice to watch people to start do it in your own life. And then it also gets a little frustrating when you watch other people put up with shit that you're just like, what is that relationship? What is that relationship doing for you? Like, is that
Totally
friend really enriching your life in any way, or are they a placeholder because you're lonely? I would rather be lonely than be literally wasting time that I will never get back.
Right.
That I could have been, learning a different language, or reading a book I wanted to watch, or read a book I wanted to read, or watch a show I wanted to watch. And I would rather do that alone than with somebody who is not enriching my life in some way. And I am one of those people that is incredibly aggressive with my boundaries, and I'm aware of that. But honestly, I have never been happier, and I will never go back to bending any of those.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Why are you accepting garbage? Stop accepting garbage.
Literally.
Exactly.
Stop accepting garbage, and you're gonna find so much more fulfillment. And let me just say something. What you were talking about is being much more aware of death, and being death kind of helping you realize how much time you don't have to waste, is what Catholicism has given me. Catholicism has actually gifted me the sense of my mortality. It has given me the idea, like, you don't have a lot of time to make the world a better place. So you have to do everything that you possibly can to make your life, and you have some control over that. I mean, there are shitty things that happen to you just day by day that you have no control over. But the things that you can control, and the things that you can choose to accept the things that make you happy, accept the things like choose joy, which is something that I know is not an easy thing to do. And I'm not trying to soapbox or anything, like saying like, oh, you're depressed and it's your fault, right? You're choosing to be depressed. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm also saying is that there are people that kind of you choose to have in your life that you don't have to. You get to dictate who gets to influence you. You get to dictate who gets to take up space around you, and you get to dictate who is in your ear and who gets to waste your time with their words. So start with that. Start evaluating the people that you have around you and see, you haven't really done anything to help me grow within the last couple of years. Maybe it's time to unpack this and reevaluate our relationship.
100%.
Yeah, death helps us release those attachments to the things that we're comfortable with and release attachment to stagnation, and really opens those pathways and doorways to true growth, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that is. And we have to be open to death to let those things die. And I feel like people may be confusing death with just permanent endings, but I see death as rebirth. There's no just death and that's the end. There's always something on the other side of what you're letting die, what you're letting go of. So I think that's like the beautiful part of death, the phoenix moment, the rebirth that comes after what dies.
I agree with you. I do think that it is kind of sad that people see death as this end, when in reality it's just a transition, right? It's just a change. That's all it is. It's just from point A to point B, and it's not really one of those points. It's that transition, that journey from point A to point B. And that itself, it's like you're never going to stay at one of those points. You're always going to be this uncomfortable, unsure, and always changing. And I think that's a big piece that's really hard for people to accept, and that's still a piece that I always struggle with, because nobody likes being uncomfortable. Everybody, we're human. We like certainty and stability, right? And death is everything but that. And it's just this complete transformation from what was, and this gruesome death, to what is to become.
But I think there's also some value, because I'm just kind of going off what you're talking when you said about being uncomfortable is normal. Having being uncomfortable with an idea like death is normal. It is a normal thing. But I think it's important for people to start being more comfortable in their discomfort. I think trying to sit in their discomfort and feel comfortable being there, because it helps you grow into a better person, in the sense that you know how to address things that make you feel uncomfortable, people who make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you don't see eye to eye with someone, or you don't share the same belief systems, or like, for example, something that I had to quickly get very comfortable with is being around. I was literally about to say Satanist and I heard noises.
one of the cool things about meeting people who have completely different views that are willing to have a discussion and not just fight you on it, of course, is that it can be met with curiosity. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you could ever do, is just ask questions. And like, yeah, of course you'll be uncomfortable, right? Like there's going to be things that I've spoken to people who have believed things that are harmful, and like just straight up harmful to different groups of people that are not them. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's because they didn't have that experience. So, they didn't believe that these things happened, or didn't, I don't know, truly understand it. And at the end of the day, like when we spoke to each other and we're willing to have a conversation, and we were both being curious with each other and asking each other questions and being honest, having that curiosity, despite the fact that I was very uncomfortable with the fact that they believed certain things, having that curiosity on both ends made me understand why they thought those things, and made them understand why some of those things could be harmful, and why maybe they should shift, maybe the expectations on certain people, or the perceptions that they had. And yeah, I just think curiosity is one of the it's an underdog.
I have a perfect term that I recently learned in grad school, Olivia, that encompasses exactly what you're expressing, and it's called cultural humility. And as a therapist in training, we're taught from this cultural humility standpoint of being open and vulnerable to others, no matter what those opinions or viewpoints are. And we can only truly understand other people when we truly understand ourselves, but also what we haven't experienced, right? Like we can share and acknowledge similar lived experiences, but we also have to be open to all those things we haven't been through. Like me, aside from being neurodivergent, I'm a pretty full able-bodied person. So I have to be open and vulnerable and curious when talking to someone who doesn't have that same lived experience, to better understand their experience. And that's what helps with that dialogue and learning. And I just think that's so important, cultural humility in any sense, but just
cultural humility. I love that. Thank you. I love terms for things. Like labels are just so helpful. They really are. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think there's a TEDx video on it. I haven't finished it. It's like 15 minutes long, but if you just look up cultural humility TEDx talk, I can't remember the professor's name, but
yeah, I absolutely will.
Yeah.
Oh, before we move on, it's only because Olivia poured some tea, and everyone, if you follow Olivia, you know how she's a slut for tea. So am I. So I brewed tea just in your honor. So there we go.
What kind of tea? Cheers.
It's 2 chamomile and 2 peppermint and 2 shots of whiskey.
Oh, you are speaking to me. My tea is literally called like whiskey bourbon, and I was like, I do have some whiskey, and so thank you. Appreciate you.
It's phenomenal. And then when you pour it over ice cubes, it's just chef's kiss.
Yeah. Or if you have like a black tea of any kind, or any kind of chai, just a little splash of cream.
Ooh.
So fucking good.
I have
so
this one.
Good.
I highly have you tried the Satanic Tea Company yet?
No, but I will.
Okay, so it's Satanic Tea Company. This was gifted to me. I love my friends. They're like, this is very up your alley. Because the name of this particular one is the Crucifixion of Christ. And it's a black tea with it's a black. I just think it's so funny that my friends thought I would appreciate this, and I do. It's fucking delicious. It's black tea, vanilla, satanic coffee beans. It's whole beans, natural oils, and cornflower petals. Game fucking
all
over.
Right. I know where I'm spending my money now.
It's very delicious.
I literally, hold on, I have to show you. Is this going on Patreon, or like the videos or anything?
Yeah, it's going on Patreon.
Okay. So that's my tea bar. Do you see all the tea?
I saw that on your room tour.
Yeah, it's gotten worse. So
you mean
better? Yeah.
Yes. Sure, but my Virgo mind doesn't like the clutter. It's freaking me out, but it's because I was trying to find a very specific tea that I could drink today. Anyway, yeah. Well, I was actually curious how you both work death work in your practice, and like how that heavily influences, because I can tell that both of you are definitely death workers. I mean, obviously I spoke to Ryan a little bit about this on my channel, but please do enlighten me. I'd love to know.
Yeah, Fonzie, you first, boo.
Okay. I love this question, and I'm so happy that you asked it. Um, because death work has been very new to me. It wasn't aside from like my work with saints, because when I first started, it was all just devotional work. Like I wasn't petitioning anything. So so praying to the saints was my first like little taste of necromancy. I didn't call it that until someone made that connection for me, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But actually, like working with like my ancestors is what kind of kickstarted it, because I didn't work with my ancestors when I first started working or doing my practicing my craft, because I simply just didn't have a space for them, because everything that's within my magical practice is within this space, and this is my bedroom. That's my bed behind me. And I didn't feel comfortable having my ancestors where my bed was, because I do things that I don't want family members to see. Very much those things. I wouldn't want to see anyone. I want not even like my best friend to see it. Whew. That's gonna be saved for our the sex magic episode. But
Hey.
so but it wasn't until I met Francisco, who you both obviously know very well, who is one of my best friends, where I started more, kind of getting more comfortable with the idea of working with my ancestors, because I think that Francisco is probably one of the most powerful witches I've ever met in my entire life, because I've seen firsthand their practice. And so working with them kind of slingshotted me into it. The way I work with death is still very experimental. It's still very new. Aside from my relationship with saints, that comes very natural to me. But like working with my ancestors and conjuring spirits, that's something that I'm still kind of playing with. And I say that very loosely and very like don't be loose with working with the dead, please. Like I'm just saying that in the sense of that I'm experimenting, but I am also very careful. So just be listeners, please. If don't just be loose with death, because death is not. It's a very intense spirit. Whatever aspect you're working with, just know that. And for my Santa Muerte devotees, they would attest to what I'm saying. So what I do is I work heavily with 3 ancestors. One of them is my great great grandfather, which is my namesake on my Instagram, Iluminado Lucente. One is a more recent one, which is my my great aunt, and then Freddie Mercury, who is a queer ancestor of mine.
I love that.
Thank you. I have him tattooed on my arm. Yesterday was his birthday, or 2 days ago was his birthday. So I do a little bit of just a lot of prayer. Most of it is prayer. Most of it is communion. Most of it is making food, especially because they're my family, right? So that's how we kind of connect with each other, is sitting at the table and just having a wonderful meal. So I set food out for them. I set coffee out for them. I set water. And then we have a meal together. I eat with them. I commune with them. Freddie Mercury, I play music for him. I play his music, and I play music now that I think he would appreciate. So I've been playing Beyonce's new album for him, and I think he really likes it, because it's so queer. So I'll set out like little candies from the Philippines that my ancestors would recognize. I have this little coconut shell that is like what you eat dessert out of. Like it came as like a little Filipino dessert. So I kept the coconut shell and I use it as an offering bowl. I use bones that I bought. I didn't actually find them, but I bought them from a vendor that is ethically sourced. And I do a little bit of bone tapping, which I expressed to Ryan recently, because I heard the term and I was like, bone tapping, tap bones. Let's try it. And so I started tapping bones, and it was like, huh, like it sent the shiver down my spine. I was like, this is wonderful. It was like, oh God, it was such an eerie sound to tap bones, because it's like this I can't explain the sound. You just have to do it to understand what I'm talking about. It's
one of my I don't want to say favorite sounds, but it's yeah, it's like you just feel it inside you when you hear it.
It's very
There's something
visceral.
about it. Yes, yeah,
Mm.
it's liminal sounding. I don't know.
That is yes. Okay. It is very liminal sounding. And what I was planning on actually doing is I was actually planning on filing grooves into the side of the bone because I want to rub them together. Because there's this sound that the bones also make when you kind of rub them against each other. It's also very eerie sound. So I kind of do, because I play music for my ancestors, because my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather was a poet, and a lot of his songs were made into really famous songs in the Philippines, and you can actually find them on YouTube. So I play those songs and I'll use my bones to the beat, and it works swimmingly. And then I also incorporate the rosary into it. So I use the rosary to, I'm not going to go into like how I do it specifically because I'm still kind of developing the technique based on what I've been doing. But basically what it is I do a decade based on how I feel, whether, I don't know, I'll say different prayers, and on the big beads, I'll call upon the ancestors instead of declaring a mystery. I'll call upon the ancestor. I would say my ancestor's name, say what ancestor of music, ancestor of poetry, blah 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 blah, and then I keep going with the decade. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very like, wow, I had the word and it just left. It just left my brain. Yeah, okay, we'll move on because
it's very intrinsic. It's based on how I feel.
Yeah,
and then I
was gonna say intentional. I mean, clearly it is, but like, and then ritualistic. Like that's also, I guess, a good placeholder word for it. But that's, I don't know. Words just leave my brain sometimes. So
makes sense. I like what you said. I like what you said, but it's based on how I feel. It's based on like how intrinsically motivated I am at that time, because I don't do all of those things all the time. I'll just kind of do the things that I feel. I'll always do the rosary. The rosary is just a staple in what I do. But I'll sometimes do the bone tapping. Sometimes I'll just sit and eat with them. You know what I mean? It really depends. It depends on how I feel.
It's interesting that you bring up the sound of bones hitting together, because one of my, I swear by this protection charm, this ward, whatever you want to call it, and it changes wherever I move. So if I, when I was living in California, it was different, but it was always bones of animals that I found in that area from that land. And obviously, I'd make sure that they were okay with working with me and everything, and I would give them offerings prior to, but I would either turn them into like a witch's ladder or a wind chime. And if you hang it, it sounds so eerie, but it's almost comforting in a way, and it's basically asking the spirit of those animals and the spirit of that land, if you work with the spirits around you, the local spirits, which are very powerful and very helpful if you gain a relationship with them. Creating a wind chime out of that, it's not only a protection, but it's also a strange way of divination or communication with your local spirits. Like, you can just see your wind chime, and it's like a hello and a goodbye every time you leave. You always see them and you hear it, but it's almost kind of like if they just sound off one day, like you just know, or like it's one of those things. So if you ever get the chance and you just happen to find some bones, maybe try that out. Again, I know this is a very specific kind of charm, and not everybody's comfortable with using animal parts or finding animal parts. However, if you do find those, it is a very, it's one of my staples, and has always just worked out really well for me. So
yeah, there's no maybe. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that.
Please do it. Yeah, let me know how it goes.
I'll send you pictures, but as soon as I get enough, I'll send you pictures.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah,
I love that. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah,
death work in my practice similar to what you said, Fonzie, the saints for sure. I only work with very, very few, but saints as necromantic work. And then my spirit that I'm devoted to, La Santa Muerte, who's known as, in English, the Holy Death. She's my main facet of death work. And I really haven't done a lot of magic with her as of late, but she came into my life where I just graduated from my undergrad, and I was also forcibly moved out of the place I was living at because everyone just at the same time that I was living with 5 other people, all of them just decided to move out at the same time, and so I had to find somewhere else to live. So I was graduating college, which was a huge transition, needing to find a new place to live, which was either having to move back with my parents or finding a place in the city of San Francisco, which I found this beautiful house. And just a lot and I'd just gone through a breakup too, so it was like so much in my life was ending and transitioning at this time that I started to discover La Santa Muerte, and mainly because of not even looking to get into death work, but just because of her being the patron saint of marginalized and oppressed peoples. And I just felt so much comfort. I felt like I was coming home to someone, to something, in that like I could embrace my spirituality and religion with her full Catholic roots, of being queer, mixed race, just all those umbrella terms that I identify with. And it wasn't until I got deeper in my practice with her that I realized just how powerful, of course, death and whatever death deities, death spirits you work with is powerful. It's death, but just like that relationship that I've built and have built with her and continue to build is just seeing it snowball into so many different areas of my life, like seeing relationships I feel like she's helped cut out, as well as relationships I feel like she's brought into my life to teach me a lesson to then remove, that like helped initiate even more growth. And so Santa Muerte has been a huge catalyst and continues to be a huge catalyst in my practice and in my life. And I haven't personally gotten comfortable with working with any kind of dead animals or parts or things like that. I'm slowly trying to incorporate bones into my practice. I know a friend of mine is working on creating bone pendulums, and I definitely want to purchase one once they're ready.
So I'm
yeah,
so excited.
link me, please.
Yeah, no, totally. Or like the closest thing I have to not bone parts, but like Catholic relics, right? Like relics are things that have been touched to holy items, be it bones or cloth items, whatever, of like holy people, like saints, right? I remember when I was in Rome back in 2017, I was at a certain basilica or church, and I was praying at the tomb that had the bones of, I think it was like the 7 Maccabee brothers. So like that's just an aspect right there in Catholicism of how there's the veneration of these relics of bones of holy people, right? And so I've worked with death in that sense, but definitely La Santa Muerte has been my main focal point. I shared in my interview with Olivia on her YouTube channel of just like, trigger warning, talking about mental health here, but like most of my life and up until today, I've struggled with like suicidal ideation, right? But when I started working with La Santa Muerte, there's 2 times where she came to me in dreams that like just shifted my entire perspective during times in my life where I wasn't even struggling with suicidal ideation, mind you. But in these dreams, she just like took me through these events or showed me certain situations of like what it would look like if I were to die or commit suicide. And I just woke up like in tears, like, holy shit, like I just feel like I have so much more of a beauty and appreciation for life. So just reflecting on the 3 of us, our convo earlier, of just like being able to better attend to the present moment and really focus and be present with our loved ones and family and friends, because you never know when things are going to come to an end, whether it's their life or ours. So working with La Santa Muerte has just shown me how prevalent death is in every aspect of our lives. And magically too, she's one of the most powerful beings I could ever think of working with. I mean, she has what are called aspects, whether certain colors that are attributed to different qualities, just like how we work with color magic, right? There's different colors of La Santa Muerte, so like she's really a go-to for anything you need. And I don't recommend anyone immediately call themselves a devotee once you start working with her, because it is a lifelong title that you claim and take on once you call yourself a devotee. But I kind of just felt so at home once I discovered her and researched her that I kind of started calling myself a devotee right off the bat, but it played out, in a good manner. But I definitely don't recommend just being like, oh my God, I like Santa Muerte, I'm going to call myself a devotee, because that's not a relationship you get to end whenever you want. She will choose whether or not it gets to end and how it gets to end. And there's like very, very, very few circumstantial times I've heard of someone being able to end a relationship with Santa Muerte like out of their own free will. So just keeping that in mind for people who may become interested in Santa Muerte after this podcast, or who have heard our interview with Frankie, the Wicked Witch of LA, who's also a Santa Muerte devotee.
Franny.
I'm sorry, Franny. And yeah, so like something what is my focal point when it comes to death work. And then something I love about St. Francis, though, he has a song or canticle called the Canticle of the Sun, and he refers to death as Sister Death. And it just goes to show, and St. Francis is someone who saw God in everything, right? He's the patron of like animals and the environment, but just really in a folk sense, helping you see the divine in everyone and everything. And even he acknowledges the beauty and importance of death. He calls her Sister Death, right? Like we're not going to ever see eternal life or an afterlife without also acknowledging the fact that we have to encounter and process and go through transformation with death, you know? So yeah, something what is my focal point when it comes to death work, and continues to be.
There were two things that you said that I kind of want to backtrack a little bit on. I'm going to try to remember them. I do not have a good memory. However, so there's the first thing that I know was that you were talking about the first time that you kind of created that relationship, and it was during a very transitional time, and everything was being like, you know, viciously uprooted and shifted to something else. And there was actually a TikTok sound, funny enough, and it's this, it's just this woman like crying and like scream crying, like it's like you can feel it in like the gut and like just your heart, like it's like such a deep grief and like pain in this cry. And the caption just said something about like, once you cry like this once, you'll make sure that you never do it again, or something like that. And I thought about that because I remember and I remember I was very young, but I remember the first and the last time I ever cried like that. I was physically like on the ground, like could not stand, was just sobbing so hard and for so long that I was like in an altered state. Like I wasn't on anything or drunk or whatever. It was just, I was just so broken in that moment. And I remember that was the moment that like, it literally felt like somebody walked up to me. Like I was like in the darkness of my room in the middle of the fucking night. My windows were open. I remember this. My windows were open and it was like just the moon. And like just coming through my windows and like the street lights, and I was sobbing on my floor. And I felt like this person had like walked, like I swear to God, I saw feet for a second, like shoes or something, like right next to me. And it was just kind of like, I'm gonna let you have your moment, but this is it. Like it was just this weird, it was not comforting, but it was very much like, I'm gonna let you have your moment, but like after this, you're gonna stand up and you're gonna keep going, type of thing. And that moment in my life, I can tell you that I am a completely different person. Like I don't recognize the person that was before that. So it's weird, and I believe that that was the spirit of death. So because that was when my death work went like full on. And then something that Fonzie, you said way earlier, that death, you know, you were saying, I say experiment, but be very careful, because death is a very intense energy. And I think, Ryan, we talked about this, that we have a tough time, or a lot of people have a tough time differentiating intense and dangerous. And yes, they can both be the same thing, right? But I would say I'm an intense person, but I wouldn't inherently say that I'm a dangerous person. I suppose I could be, but I wouldn't say that I'm a dangerous person, right? But I'm an intense person, and those are different things. I think being able to differentiate that, of like when we meet the spirit of death or go to a cemetery and that the spirits of death are there, it's not dangerous, but because it's so intense, and if you're not used to it, it can feel dangerous. So if anybody is thinking about, you know, reaching out to death, or starting to do death work, or working with spirits of the dead, yeah, you do have to understand that it is really intense. And especially if you start doing death work, like people see that in you, that you have this acceptance of you, and they will react in the way that they will react. I don't know how else to say that, but it gets intense sometimes, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't get ready to work with death unless you're ready for shit to be cut out of your life. Like,
No. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell a little story, only because Olivia, that story, it's
I don't think I've ever told that story. This was just for you. Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
seriously, that is such a wonderful story to share, because the story I'm about to tell you, I also haven't told anyone but Ryan.
Oh.
This was the first time I conjured my ancestors, and it was with Franny. And this is going to be a very short story. They casted they called in the corners. They did their whole thing, Franny, because Franny is absolutely incredible. And I hope one day the two of you and us will be in the same city so that we can conjure together.
I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah. And I'm going to feed you, I promise.
I will definitely make that happen.
They're like going on Google Flights right now.
Sorry.
I'm talking about handmade lumpia. I'm talking about from scratch pancit. I'm talking about...
Listen.
I'll make the adobo.
I'm talking about eating with your hands. I will pick up 6 bottles of vinegar because I know how much you love vinegar.
Oh! Like physically excited. I'm like, oh my god.
And then also, Ryan, you know, I told you how fucking fire my spaghetti is. But it was the first time that I conjured my ancestors, and it was with Franny, and I was scared because I'd never done it before, and that's why I wanted to do it with Franny. And so this whole technique of using the rosary to conjure the dead came to me during that ritual. It just happened. I don't know why, but it just like I wanted to do the rosary. So I had my rosary in my hand, and I was holding Franny's hand with my right hand, and I had my rosary in my left hand, and I started doing the mysteries, and I started on the mystery beads. I started calling my ancestor. Eventually, I think this is kind of what Olivia is trying to get at, where when you experience death, not actually experiencing the action of death, but experiencing the spirit of death, it is so it's so intense. And what I'm talking about, the intensity, you can't even describe it. It's just something that you feel, because I got to like the 3rd decade, and like there was like this haunting wind that started to blow through the house, and it was like that, and we started hearing knocks at the front door, and then I started like bawling while I was saying the Hail Mary. Like I started just I almost choked on my spit because I was like so emotional. And that's kind of what I was getting from you, where it's just the most human you could possibly feel. It's like the most humbling experience you could feel in your entire life.
It's like a complete purge. Like there is it and like nothing is allowed to be left. Like it is a complete and full purge. It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna have a sob session, like be pretty sad, and then, you know, like watch a bunch of Let's Plays and feel better later. It's, you feel so, I don't know how else to, like, just temporary. And
yes,
and I don't want to say insignificant, because you can still, you still feel the importance of your existence, but you just realize that you are only a blip of the big picture. Like you're part of the moving machine, but the piece that you are is so fucking small. It's important, but it's fucking small, and you need to understand how to work well. And so if you're not working well, everything needs to be purged, and it's like like you said, the most human thing. And yeah, it's like it just obliterates you in
oh god, in the best possible way.
Yeah, like, I mean, coming out of it is great, but doing it in the moment is fucking terrible.
It feels like I felt like I was having a panic attack. Like that's how it felt. Like I felt like I was having a heart attack because I was so emotional. Like it was the most visceral thing I'd ever experienced. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Coming out of it is so cathartic. It's like, oh my God, it feels like 1,000 good cries, you know? And I think it's so unbelievably humbling. And it's one of the reasons why I believe that magic exists, is because of that experience.
Yes, yeah, that, I mean, it's so that, oh, you know what? You just helped me explain that feeling of seeing the feet when I was on the ground, of like, it wasn't comforting, but it was almost like after everything was done, it was like, you can have your moment, but once it finished, it is like getting up and like as if a complete storm just obliterated everything you knew about yourself, everything you own, like physically, and like your relationships, everything around you is in complete fucking shambles. And that energy, whatever that spirit was, which I truly believe was the spirit of death, was her just standing there and being like, okay, now that it's completely destroyed, get up and clean it. It, you know, like, it wasn't like, oh no, it was very much like, now get up and clean it, put it together how you want it. And I was
yes. Like, oh. Yeah, you are fucking, oh God. And that's how it all culminated into this creature that you see before you.
And I love this creature that I see before me.
Thank you very much. And I also love this creature these two creatures that I see before me. So yes, absolutely. This is what Ryan, I'm going to give you the mic in just 1 second. I promise you.
You're good, baby.
But like, I'm getting so amped up because this is exactly what I've had in my head, where I just like, I've only had this conversation with you and Franny, you know, but it's, when you look at death, it's not just physical death. It really is a transformation. We experience numerous deaths throughout our lives. There are aspects of ourselves that die consistently, and that's where growth comes from, right? So your entire life is completely obliterated. There's nothing left but solid, fertile ground. And the only thing that you can do is plant your feet and cultivate yourself again and grow into someone new. That is exactly what death work is mm-hmm. being very aware that physical death exists, but also spiritual, emotional, and mental death also exists. And those things end. And then you grow into a new person. You focus on your blooming. And then you bloom into a new person every single time.
Yes. I love that.
And so when you look at our Patreon people, when you're looking at the people that you're looking at right now, this is a result of a past death. These people that you see before you are the result of a past death. Okay, Ryan, you can have the mic for like the next hour.
No, y'all are good. No, first of all, I really appreciate y'all sharing those stories in this space, which is going to be made public. Those are such intense and vulnerable experiences that are just so beautiful to hear. And it just made me think of the experience I went through coming up almost a year ago to the day of I was seeing someone who I really thought I was in love with. In the end, it was just lust, but I really thought I was in love with this person, only dating them for a month and a half, right? And it was the first time I was broken up with, which hurt my ego. And this was the first time that I found myself, Olivia, like on the floor in the fetal position, clenching my fucking gut, crying. Thank God I was home alone because I was just sobbing. And this was when I still had Santa Muerte's altar in my living room because a friend that I previously lived with was also a devotee. So we shared an altar in the living room. I still had my Marian altar in here, both altars which are now in my bedroom. And my ancestor altar is still in the living room. So I was on the floor, sobbing, crying. I'm like, why me? Why the fuck is this happening? Like, I finally felt ready to put myself out there and date. And I had this motherfucker just break my fucking heart. And I was just like, I can't remember where I read it. I really wish I could give credit to where I saw or read this, but I was reading something about, I don't know if it was specifically like the healers and shamans that these people would go to, or just us as humans in general, but being in that state of grief somehow allows that vulnerability to like make your petition go straight to the divine, right? Like you have so much more access to the divine in that moment of vulnerability and grief because you feel like nothing. You've shed everything in that moment. You feel dead when like these
you
moments
have
where
no ego left to
yes.
try to save.
Yes, that's exactly
There's
it.
nothing left to
that's
even
exactly right.
think about trying to save. So
yes.
maybe that's a piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just felt fucking dead in that moment, even though like I don't want to say it was just a breakup to like judge my feelings, but like that breakup like just caused me to feel fucking dead inside for a hot second. And so after that breakup happened and this like allowed such a huge transition in my life, like the funny thing is that person broke up with me on the death date anniversary of my grandpa. So now that date has a twofold meaning to it. And so
Oh my god.
yeah, and so that fucking sucked, but maybe that was him coming into play, I don't know. But you know, so I was like, you know what, fuck it, even though I'm ready to date, I'm gonna just have my hot girl summer. And then lo and behold, like 2-3 months later, I ended up unintentionally meeting my partner, and for both of us, it's the healthiest relationship either of us have ever been in our entire life. And so that for me was just such an incredible moment of like how I was able to use that grief, that vulnerability, that ego death in a sense, and that looking back at a year like that, Ryan's dead, here I am now in the relationship of my dreams, you know. And it's just crazy how the death of things in our lives can just be catalyst for such transformation. And it's terrifying, but it's beautiful, and it's just everything all at once.
It's so obvious to me. So I don't want to be the person that's like real death workers and fake death, but there are. At the end of the day, there are people who are, oh, I'm so into death and I totally fuck with spirits and whatever. And it's like, sure, cool. But you can tell because the true people who sit down and have a relationship with death are the most grateful people you will ever meet. And
okay, you're gonna make me cry.
but I mean, think about it. You know, like I don't know a lot of death workers in general, but now I'm meeting all of you and I love all of you. And it's just nice to have this connection as well. But further, you know, there's, again, you know, you have that acute awareness of how temporary everything is, of how every passing moment you will never have back. And I make it a point that the people that I love, I will always say goodbye to you. I will always tell you that I love you. If I'm feeling that in that moment, you know, like if I'm at, you know, a Target run and I'm like in the coffee section and I'm like, you know what? I just really love my friend Meg, and she's just one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen. I'm just gonna whip my phone out and text that to her. Because at the end of the day, it's like I said, I don't know. I have no idea if she's having a good day or a bad day, or maybe one day, like that day is the day that she decides that she will never speak to me again. I don't know. Or, you know, I'll never see her again for some reason. I don't know. And with my partner, he's a first responder. So of course, you know, like that heightens everything. But especially it's one of those things that like I just want you to know how much I love you. And like, I'm not somebody who has a lot of energy for a lot of relationships. So when I love somebody, friend, family, partner, I love you really hard. And I make it very known. And I think I see that in a lot of death workers that I meet, because they just know. And maybe it's a fear-based thing, but I do think a lot of it is just like, I just want to make sure that this counts. You know, like, it's not, I don't think that it comes from like a base of fear. Some of it might, but for the most part, I think it's more of this understanding or this awareness that it's like, just in case, I just want you to know that I love you, or in this moment, how I feel about you. And you know, like, I just think that that's one of the big giveaways of like a true person who has a true relationship with death, is they're the most grateful people that you will ever meet.
100%. Olivia, I want to ask you, is there anything regarding like magic in death work or death in general that we haven't touched or asked about yet that you would like to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. We covered a lot. We covered a lot of good stuff, I think.
I have one thing, if we don't mind going into it. I want to talk about psychopomps.
I'm here for it.
So psychopomps, if y'all are not aware of the term, okay, we need to talk about something else because Olivia got me nice and emotional.
Sorry.
It's fine. I'm not usually an emotional person, but people
Neither am I.
Pull it out of me.
I'm emotional as fuck.
No, I know you are. This fiery Leo over here is always so emotional.
See, this Earth sign won't show you shit.
Right. And this airy one is just so swifty, so don't trust them. Ryan, you can actually edit this out before I start talking about psychopomps. Is that jar still active?
Which one?
Which one?
The one.
The one I made on the dude who broke my heart?
Mhm.
Oh, well, I never broke it. When I got into my relationship, I didn't want the connection to still exist in my house, so I threw it away, but I kept the jar intact. So if it breaks, it breaks. But when I threw it away, I made sure it was like still intact so that it got taken to the dump and that it's still working.
I was just because I don't remember if you told me if you got rid of her or not. I was wondering if it was still active or not because I'd like to see it. I'd like to take a shit in front of it. Anyways, so I'm gonna lead into it. So I want to talk about psychopomps because it's a very interesting concept to me. Now, if y'all who are listening don't know what a psychopomp is, psychopomps are basically just spirits who are guides to folks when they're crossing over to bring them to wherever they're supposed to go. Okay. And that means a lot of different things in a lot of different traditions. Okay. Now, there is something that I mentioned to both of you kind of in passing that I'm trying to develop a certain relationship with a certain spirit to be a psychopomp in my practice, but I would like to ask y'all, because I do know that Ryan works very heavily with Santa Muerte, who is a psychopomp, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes, I would assume. Olivia, if you feel comfortable sharing whatever you feel comfortable sharing, if you have spirits that you do work with in regards to psychopomps, or maybe how you feel about psychopomps, just go ahead, take it.
I don't know. I don't think I do. Maybe I do, but they're not like deities of name, I suppose. If I do, they're usually just spirits. Maybe they're the same thing, I'm not sure. But I like what are they? What do I refer them to? They're like protectors of this specific cemetery that I love. And they're very intense there. They're not, I can tell that they're not the spirits of the dead. They were not living people prior, but they're almost like guardians of this specific cemetery, and they are very intense to work with. I don't work with them super often, but when I do, it is kind of like that, I feel breathing down my neck, type of thing. And it's very like, okay, this is happening and I have to just be brave and see it through because I'm asking for this, and the thing that I'm asking for I really want and, believe in and whatever. But I don't really work with any psychopomps that I would say by name, other than Hecate when I was in the course with Jason Miller, but after the course ended, I didn't continue to work with her. I still have her statue and I still give her offerings a couple, here and there, but it's not really a deep relationship. It's more of just kind of like visiting your college, professor and being like, oh, hey, remember me? And a gift or something. It's more like that and less of full-blown relationship.
Ryan, your experience as Santa Muerte being a psychopomp?
Yeah, I haven't asked her to really be like an intermediary in her psychopompic sense for me in any aspect, other than I feel like my ancestral veneration practice actually started after I devoted myself to Santa Muerte. I had a relationship with her, or started to develop a relationship with her before I started venerating my ancestors. So I kind of feel like I don't know if that would have happened had I not become a devotee, because I feel like she just kind of opened that path for me to then start working with my ancestors, especially once I got back in touch with being Catholic in the folk sense and getting in touch with those ancestors as well. And then the only angel I have a super close relationship with, or at least that I work intimately with, is Saint Raphael, who is also known as a psychopomp in some lore of his. And so I haven't really worked with him in terms of helping me meet or commune with other spirits, but I know that's part of his mythology. Really the only necromantic work I tend to do is with saints, which I don't feel like I call upon Santa Muerte or Raphael to act as an intermediary for me. I don't do too much graveyard or cemetery work just yet. Part of me is fearful of it, but more so it's just like I know I'm not ready for it, and that when I do need it, that I'll know when it's needed. So I kind of just, if I ever go to the cemetery, I'm lucky enough that I don't live far from the cemeteries that I have relatives buried at. So if I ever do go, it's mainly just to visit their graves and pay them respects. But I've never gone to adopt a grave or take cemetery dirt or do any workings. But if I do, I would obviously take Santa Muerte and Saint Raphael with me for protection, and also help in that intermediary form as a psychopomp to commune with those spirits much more easily than just going there on my own, you know. So that's really it for me.
I do think it's really important to talk about like cemetery work, and if we want to go into that,
Please.
am I taking up too much time?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, great.
You can take Olivia. You can take all of my time if you want. You take all of it.
Okay. No. Well, okay. So cemeteries, right? Like I said, I am a cemetery dweller, mainly because I don't like loud noises and a lot of things happening. It's too overwhelming for me for the most part, and parks are too much. So cemeteries were usually a thing that I would seek refuge in, and less so usually to do like workings in. But of course, the more you go, the more relationship you have with that space and the spirits that dwell within. And I think it's really important to note that the first cemetery you go to doesn't have to be the one that you work with, right? I don't live in an area where I have a lot of relatives buried, unfortunately. But I do visit very different cemeteries, and all of them have completely different energies and spirits there. It's kind of like going into different neighborhoods is how I would kind of explain it. Just, you know, some of them they're pretty on the outside, but like the feeling inside is just like everything just feels like, it doesn't feel like spirits communing and speaking and interacting. It feels like mannequins, you know, things like that, where like it's pretty, but like everything just feels plastered here. And interesting thing, I'm in Colorado, for those of you who don't know. There's a park that is downtown Denver, and it's called Cheeseman's Park, and it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places because it was built on top of a cemetery. And of course, they say that they moved all of the bodies, but knowing how the track record of people saying that they move bodies is not actually very good. So, and there has been bodies found after it's become a park. So I believe that wherever they say they moved these bodies, a lot of them are just headstones and they're empty graves. And I think that's kind of why a lot of these places feel empty, the specific cemeteries that they say that they moved these bodies to. Now, I've had different experiences. This might be a long tangent. I hope that's okay. Okay, great. I've had different experiences where there's, again, that one cemetery that I was talking about with those spirits that are kind of guardians of this cemetery. The first time I ever went there, it was actually, I think it was on Valentine's Day, with somebody that was just like, I don't know, you want to hang out and like get some Thai food and go up to the mountains? And I was like, hell yeah. So we were like, I was like, well, I'm not doing anything, you know? So we went out and we found the cemetery. It's not on the maps. Just passed by it. We pulled by and we're walking through, and I could just tell, like I said, there's a difference between dangerous and intense. And it was definitely intense, but it was not an intense of just like intense energy. It was like, kind of like, yeah, right now, you don't need to be here. You don't need to be here. Just not right now. Okay. Like, you need to leave. And it was less of like, we don't like you, get out, and more of like, you're here at the wrong time. And I don't know why that was, but I was like, I'm going to listen to you, and we're just going to haul ass right back. And then I visited again, and, you know, they seemed a little less intense, and it was just, they're still intense, but it was not like, you need to leave. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, I see you again. I'm keeping an eye on you, but I see you again. And we've built a little bit of a better relationship after that. There was another cemetery, again, way out in buttfuck nowhere and somewhere in the mountains, and it was this really old cemetery that I was really looking forward to seeing. And I brought my friend, and we drove all the way out there. I think it was an 2-hour drive, and pull up, and I want to say this place was maybe, what's a good like measurement, maybe 2 blocks, right, of a neighborhood, 2 blocks of a walk from the road. And my friend and I started walking, and just like, I think we probably got 3 yards. We started walking and we stopped and just looked at each other. There was no spoken words, but both of us just knew. It felt like the trees were saying, like, you don't want to go there. And it was not the cemetery or the spirits. It felt like the spirits around the cemetery was kind of like, turn back. And like, it was I don't know how to explain it. I sound, I'm sure I sound, some people like, whatever. But there was just, we never spoke about it up until actually recently. But we looked at each other and we were just kind of like, we should go. And she was like, okay, yeah, I agree. We just turned around, got in my car, and left. We drove like 2 hours to go to this place. We were so close. I could see the fence. And we started walking, and then we were just like, no, turned around and left. And so,
Oh my God.
There was, I don't know what it was about it, but there was something, like, it just felt like the trees were like, no. And we were just like, okay. And then there's another cemetery that feels empty. Like, it kind of feels like there's nobody there. Like, everybody, it's like an abandoned home. There's another one that I love, and it feels like a really nice neighborhood that everybody loves each other and talks and knows each other's names and has barbecues all the time. And so, like, I have picnics there all the fucking time because I'm just like, hey guys, what's up? And I'll sit there and I'll have picnics and then I'll leave. And it's a very, like, airy, like, nice, welcoming feeling. So all of these stories, this whole tangent to basically say, visit different cemeteries and get a vibe for it, because if I, like, the Hecate course required you to go to cemeteries and do some workings, and I would have not chosen the cemetery with, like, the barbecue vibe and, like, everybody, like, super chill, because it just, they probably, like, the spirits there probably would have been like, girl, what the fuck you doing? Like, I guess I'll help, but, like, what? I would probably make a relationship with the spirits and the guardians of that one that kind of warned me but accepts me now, and now I have a relationship, because they feel more like, I'm here, like, I'll work with you, but it's not like this giddy cute little neighborhood that everybody's just like best friends, so I think if you're doing cemetery work, that's why it's so daunting for a lot of people, is because different cemeteries have different energies, and you really have to understand who you're working with. It's kind of like, you go into somebody's house and the energy there. So really, really feel that out. I think that's, like, one of the biggest things that I was never told, and I just had to learn.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that's
no need
totally
to apologize.
fine. No, please do not apologize for that, because that was amazing. What I want to ask is, when you do go to the cemetery to do work, what do you, if you feel comfortable, letting us know, what do you do there? Like, what is without getting into anything too specific, like, what is the work that you do there?
A lot of the time I just hang out, to be completely honest. There's not a lot of times that I go there to, like, ask for anything specific. A lot of the time it's more of the intention of almost having a conversation. So it's like, I want to just go spend time with my friends. I call up my friends and I hang out with them. It's kind of like that, because it feels weird to me, especially when you start working with any kind of spirit, local, ancestor, deity, whatever, dead, to just be like, all right, I'm going to ask for this thing now. Like, that's like walking up to a stranger on the street and being like, hey, can I have $50? And they're like, who the fuck are you? Like, it feels like that they're like, maybe they might be like, sure, but, like, for the most part, don't you want to, like, ask a really good friend of yours for a favor like that? Because most likely they would say yes. And also, like, you have a relationship with them, and you've probably given them gifts on their birthday, or, like, thought about them and just, like, saw something at Target that I love Target, if you can't tell, classic white girl. You see something there and you're like, oh yeah, they would like this, and you just buy it for them, or you get their favorite order and you remember it. It's like, you have this relationship with this place or with these spirits, and going there, I think, just hanging out and just kind of understanding and having a conversation. So I like to bring my tarot cards and my oracle cards. I have a specific deck that I like to bring, and a lot of the time I just stroll wherever I decide to end up. There's definitely been a lot of graves that I've just happened to end up at that I keep feeling drawn back to, and then I'll look those people up and see who they were. And a lot of the time they were teachers, which is, I think, is really interesting. And this one woman I just found, actually Meg, she took me to the cemetery for a she set up this whole picnic for me. It was really cute for my birthday. And I know, she's the best. And so she started walking and she's like, I just really like this grave. And so she sat down next to it, and it was this woman who lived to 98. And I want to say that she was retired, but she was like in the description of the obituary, it was like something about, I just remember like something about like herbs, but it wasn't like said that way. So I was kind of like, were you a witchy woman? You know, like I was like, oh, I don't know. But it's just interesting. So a lot of the time I just kind of like make a relationship. When I do workings, it's with specific graves that I've been drawn to and looked up that person, or it's with the spirits that, like, it's like the accumulation of the cemetery, because the cemetery itself has a spirit, right? Like, it's not just the spirits that are in there, it's the cemetery itself. So a lot of the time it's that. And because I work with death, you know, like I want to put things to death, or I want to like go into a transition with something, and I'll leave things there or do my workings there. It's easier to find very, very old cemeteries here in Colorado because we have a lot of like really old mining and pioneer cemeteries and things like that that don't close because they're not used anymore. But yeah, things like that. I always find Mason symbols. My grandpa was a Freemason, and we didn't know that until he died and all of them showed up to his funeral. But yeah, so
God.
It's weird. So every so often, you know, I'll see those symbols and I'm just like, hey, you know, like, you know, like just kind of like a nod. Like I don't actually, there's nothing that I actually like do with it, but it's just kind of like, comrade, hello. Yeah, no, just kind of like,
We see
hi.
each other.
Yeah, I see you. I've acknowledged. But I think a lot of people expect like these big ceremonies and the candles, and I've had a couple of those, but for the most part, those are reserved for something that needs that huge shift in energy and that those spirits on your side, you know. And for the most part, like I just like having that relationship. They comfort me.
Before you leave here, you have to recommend cemeteries here in Los Angeles. I know you lived in Los Angeles, so I know you need to recommend Los Angeles cemeteries, the ones that I need to visit.
I actually only have ever been to the Hollywood Forever.
Okay, that's fine, because I love that cemetery.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually only ever been there. And yeah, I like that one. That one is like very nice, and
Are you
I
allowed to
like
have
the way
picnics
it's
there?
used. Huh?
Are you allowed to have picnics there?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have Ryan, I'm so sorry. You can edit this out. Frankie is thinking of coming to LA within the next couple of months, and I promised them I would take him to a cemetery and have a picnic. So I was thinking of Hollywood Forever. So I think I might take them to Hollywood Forever.
Oh, you should. I think they would really like it there. It's gorgeous, and you know, I mean, who doesn't like that cemetery? It's just beautiful.
it's so pretty.
Yeah. Okay, but I have to say, when I was in Germany, I was like, European cemeteries are on a different fucking level. Let me tell you, I love the cemeteries there. And there was I was staying with my friend, and she lived in this little city town, I don't know. And she showed me this little cemetery, well, a graveyard that was connected to a church. And fun fact, a graveyard is connected to a church and a cemetery is not. Fun fact.
Oh.
Anyway.
Good to know.
But not that I would ever be like, that's wrong, but you know.
I will. I'll use that.
So, okay, perfect, great. And so she showed me, she's like, oh yeah, like it's gorgeous, and there was all these like old graves, gorgeous headstones. And one day she had to, you know, go to uni, and so I was like, I'm just gonna fuck off and walk around and get lost, probably, we'll see. And I kept walking past the cemetery, or past the graveyard, and there was another cemetery like right across the street. And I was like, oh my God, you didn't show me this one. And she goes, I didn't even know that was there. It's huge. I was like, how did you not know? And I spent 4 hours walking around this gorgeous cemetery, and they just, like, the spirits there were just so, I mean, you could tell that they were visited, and like the way that they took care of their cemetery there was just immaculate compared to the ones that you see, like those plain lawns, and there's like those perfectly shaped flowers and like bush, like it's just like uncomfortable, and everything looks like it's like out of like a Barbie playset, whereas like these are, it's like they're intentional, like these flowers are chosen by the family, and there's like trees that are grown over, and it was just gorgeous. Yeah, I'm gonna have to like send you some photos that I took, because, and then I just sat underneath this tree was just like, hang out for a while, and I was like, don't mind if I do. And it was like, take some moss with you, and I was like, don't mind if I do. So I did, and I still have it, and I love it. But like, it was just one of the most, like, it's I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know how people are like, oh, I love the food so much when I visit these different countries. I'm like, the cemeteries are just so great. Like, like, they're just like so cool, you know. So that's one of the things I love.
I think Olivia should be a TripAdvisor writer for cemeteries.
Cemeteries, yeah. You know what? I should. I think actually you can make Google Maps and do like little favorites and stuff, and you can make those public. I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
Oh, that's
so
sick.
Maybe I should do that.
That's sick. I want to go back to what you were talking about, like those perfectly manicured cemeteries. Because I know what you're talking about, because I experienced that before. Do you know Forest Lawn here in LA?
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yeah.
so Forest Lawn, that is like
Yes.
the most pristine, like, it's so pristine, like it's so heavily, it's like the like waspy suburb of cemeteries.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like everything has like that perfectly rounded hedge. Everything doesn't grow there. Everything looks plastic, you know, and I think there's a reason why. I think it might be the people that were buried there. And
you know what kind of energy that gives me? Have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Oh my God. I think you're going to be one of the many people who cringe when I say, no, I have not.
Oh, well, okay. For listeners who have, then maybe you just won't understand this reference. But for listeners who have, it's very much that Bossing Say, like, I am Judy. There is no war in Bossing Say. Like, it's like they're glassy-eyed and they're like, everything's fine. And on the outside of these walls, there's this like whole world war happening. And they're just like in complete denial. Like, they're literally brainwashed. That's how it feels. They're like, everything is like so pretty and like everybody's living their life and it's just like great. But on the outside, it's just like this war, and they're just like, no, everything's totally fine. And you're like, it's like the people who smile, but the smile doesn't reach their eyes. It's like that.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
That's what Forest Lawn is to me. It's just like this. And you're like, that's creepy as fuck.
You know what it looks like when someone like us, like me, Olivia, Ryan, walks into Forest Lawn? It's like Edward Scissorhands when he first comes down the mountain into the neighborhood.
Yes! You know what? Good.
Right. Good. I'll give you that haircut. Like, I will trim your hedges.
And I believe that those spirits are also like I believe that. I believe that they're like looking at me with like, oh, she's wearing all black. Yeah. You know, just because you're a spirit doesn't make you this, like, I don't know. I feel there's some of the dead, I'm like, you have attitude.
Yeah, the devil's in them. They still have that. They still carry that narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still carry that with them. Oh, yuck. Yeah, so that's why when you said like perfectly manicured, I was thinking of Forest Lawn. Because it's very much that. It feels very rigid. It doesn't feel very free. It feels kind of like it feels very gated. It feels very, yeah. So I know what, now you made that connection.
One place in LA, I'm sure you've been, what is it called? The Wishing Tree, or? Yeah,
it's a hike. It's a hike in Parker Mesa. It's one of my favorite trails. It's next to Malibu.
I love that little spot. When you get to the tree, like, yeah, it's been, tainted with people and trash and whatever. But like you can tell that people really do sit down and like write what they really want to write to whoever they need to write. And I think that that's really, like, that itself is like such a good, it's an interesting accumulation. Like when you go there, you feel nostalgic, but you don't know why, even if you've never been there. Because I think people just pour out these like memories and these like emotions that they don't feel like they can put anywhere else. And so it's almost like it is just like released into this space, and people go there and just continue to feed it. So, you know, if you've never been to LA and you want to go there, then please do take a hike.
It really is what Olivia, I'm gonna give Ryan a little bit of context, because the Wishing Tree is really cool because the people have really made it a sacred space. They've made it into a shrine. Because there's a box at the roots of the tree where people put petition. Well, yeah, we would call them petitions, but like people call them wishes. And I don't know if it's still there, but when I was there the last time, there was a little wooden box that you're allowed to kind of put stuff inside. Some people bury it. So it really depends. It's very magical. It's a very magical thing to do. And it's kind of on the way to the top of this mountain in this hike that starts in Malibu. And you pass by this tree, and it's very Instagram. So a lot of like that is happening. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm at the Wishing Tree, but they don't really understand the magic. But, you know, for us who know better, it's a very magical place, and you can feel it. And then eventually, after you make your petition, you hike, and not a very easy hike, but you hike up this mountain, and there's like a plateau at the top. And at the top, you see Los Angeles. You can see the entire city. And on the other side is the ocean. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's a great hike. And I always suggest it to people, despite the fact that that's one of the only quote unquote touristy things I would ever suggest to somebody going to LA, but it is one of those things that I do think is like worth it for sure.
Everyone wants to do Runyon Canyon, and I'm just like,
oh my god, get away from me and
get away from Runyon. Yeah, seriously.
Get away.
They just want to go to Runyon because they want to like run into like Joe Jonas or something.
Oh my god. Yeah, I worked on the Hollywood Walk for like 3 or 4 years, and I met so many celebrities and didn't even realize it half of the time. I was like yeah.
It's a very LA thing to be jaded by celebrities, because it's like we see them all the time, and it's just like, okay.
I also lived under a rock, so like half of the time I didn't know who. So do you know who The Game is?
Yeah.
I didn't. Okay, he's a rapper, I think.
Yeah, he's a rapper.
Yeah, some of your listeners are gonna be like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm sorry. Okay, so I was working at the Hollywood Walk at Dave & Buster's, and
oh my god. I used to go to that all the time.
Did you really? I worked there. But I worked there.
Are you talking about the one at Hollywood and Highland?
Yes.
Yeah, I used to go to that Dave & Buster's. I love Dave & Buster's.
Maybe if you sat outside on the patio, that was my section.
I sure did.
Then maybe I served you at one point, but I had really long hair, so you would never recognize me.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, it was like almost down to my hips, and
I didn't know you until you had short hair anyway.
That's true. Well, yeah. It's weird to think that a lot of people don't know me with long hair now. Anyway, yeah, so I was working one of the parties. It's like a backroom thing, and like, you know, this one of the security guards was standing outside of one of the rooms, and I was cleaning up the other. And I went to the security guard and I was like, "You want to hang out in this room and like keep me company while I'm cleaning?" He goes, "No, I gotta watch the game." And I thought he was talking about like the sports game that was on, and I was like, "The game is on in my room." And he's like, "No, Olivia, I have to watch the game." And I was like it's kind of like Who's on First, if you know that skit. It was very much that. And and oh my god, my theater kid is coming out.
Really? Oh my god, really though?
Yeah. And so I was like, "But the game is in my room." And he goes, "No, Olivia, the game." And I'm staring at, like, we're looking at each other like the other person is fucking stupid. And I was like, "What are you talking?" And he goes, "The artist." And I was like, "Who?" And he was like, "The game." And I was like, just because you're saying it louder doesn't mean I'm gonna understand. And so finally I realized, I was like, oh, he's an artist, but that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, you have no idea. Yeah. Yeah, but that's how you know someone is from LA, is when they don't give a shit about celebrities.
Well, and I guess, you know what's funny is when I moved to LA from Colorado, it was right as Colorado was becoming cool. So like growing up, if you told somebody like, oh, I'm from Colorado, like growing up, I always had the reaction, like if you told somebody like, oh, I'm from North Carolina, they'd be like, that's cool. Like what do you have there? Like that, nice. Like people didn't give a shit. And then when I moved to LA, slowly I started seeing more and more people being like, oh my God, Colorado, I would love to go there. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, why? I mean, I love Colorado, but like, I was like, it didn't used to be cool, just like thrifting didn't used to be cool, and now it is. And like,
right.
It's just funny to watch those things change. But we're completely off topic. I'm sorry. It was
I don't care.
Tangent.
That was a fun conversation.
That was a super fun conversation. And Olivia, I'm hella curious, like, what sources would you recommend, whether it's related to death magic or not? What are some things that have either influenced your craft, anything you'd like to offer to our audience in terms of books, podcasts, show, whatever?
Oh, okay. So Morbid Magic by, I think, Tomas, is it Prower, I believe, is a great book on just kind of understanding death and culture all around the world, and just kind of getting tidbits there, and a general understanding of how to build your own death practice, if that's something you're interested in. If you're looking into collecting bones or specimens of any kind, definitely looking into something called vulture culture. And just a heads up, if you're in the United States, don't collect any birds is a pretty good rule of thumb, just laying that out there. It's illegal, it's a felony, so be careful. And yes, even feathers, which, like, that's a whole thing. You can read about that online. Of course, Jason Miller's books, his book Consorting with Spirits is a fantastic book on working with spirits and doing any kind of spirit work. And then otherwise, those are like the hard and fast sources. But I think when it comes down to it, really just going in on it and practicing for yourself and just experimenting and figuring out what works best for you. Ooh, Of Blood and Bone is great. I don't know why I didn't recommend that one. Oh my God. Yeah, that one's a great one. Yeah, so those are my sources.
Thank you. And thank you again so much for being here and sharing everything you've shared, especially those intimate, vulnerable stories that have tied into your practice and death work and all of that. So thank you for taking the time to be here and for sharing this space with us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Truly having a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
But before we leave, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, this is going to be our last episode for this season. And Ryan and I are just so, I'm going to let Ryan speak. I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I'm sure that they would agree with me when I say that we are so immensely grateful for our audience, because I don't know, the platform that we wanted to create has been created, especially in the realm of folk Catholicism. It's something that we are reconstructing, and I would like to think that we have a pretty big hand in it. And if it wasn't for our audience, sharing our posts and listening to the podcast and being excited whenever we, came out with another episode, and being so immensely supportive of the work that we do, I don't know. I'm just so immensely grateful.
Yeah, and I just echo that same sentiment. Doing a podcast was always something on the back burner of my mind that I never initiated as a solo thing. So to have been invited and partake in this, and to see how much it's grown, see how much it's helped other people grow in their practice, like brings a tear to my eye. Like I never thought just talking about, our experiences, my experiences would be so influential and impactful. So to see the way just having this platform and sharing this with y'all has impacted us and y'all has just been so fucking beautiful. And we are so excited for the second season of what's to come and what we're going to talk about. And just, it warms my heart. What started as just like a little hobby, a little side thing, turned out to be a passion project that I cannot wait to continue and to see transform and evolve more than what it already has.
Absolutely. A lot of blood and tears went into this podcast. A lot of work went into it. And also a lot of friendships were cultivated because of it. especially Ryan and I's friendship was cultivated through this podcast. And I can't. Oh no.
Oh, is it? Are those emotions?
No, it's not. Nope. I'm very grateful for Ryan.
I'm grateful for you, Fonzie.
Shut up. All right. With that said, with the thanks and the friendships that we have cultivated, I do want to thank everyone who has donated their time to be with us on the podcast, to share their knowledge so generously. And I'm going to start from the beginning. First, I want to begin with the brainchild, who is Burgundy, whose idea this podcast actually was. She actually was one of our original co-hosts and unfortunately had to leave. So Burgundy, we thank you if you are listening, because this was your brainchild. This is the reason why we're here. Ramona, who is by Ramona Martinez on Instagram. Austin Fuller, who is Bane X Bramble. Michael Therese McQueen, who is Saintly Tarot Mystic. Francisco, who is the Wicked Witch of LA, which is really interesting because today their episode reached 666 views and they fucking lived for it. Isn't that amazing? Chris, who is Tarot Exegete. Mana, who is Mothmana Tarot. That was Michael again. Michael was on twice. Sky Miranda. Daphne La Hechicera. I can never say her name correctly. But Laura. Juju of Juju Workin. Frankie, Chaotic Witch Aunt. And of course, Olivia, the Witch of Wonderlust. Thank you all so much for being, first of all, our friends, and being so kind and being so generous and just being with us and being such great advocates and supporters of what we do. And with that said, have a wonderful, safe Halloween. Have a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving if you celebrate, Christmas, New Year, all of the good things.
All holidays.
All the holidays. Olivia, could you drop all of your handles, all the things that people can reach you at before we say goodbye?
Yes, you can find me on YouTube as The Witch of Wonderlust with an O, not an A, as well as on Instagram, also The Witch of Wonderlust, all one word, no periods or anything, or what are the underscores? And I do have a Twitter as the Wonderlust Witch. That's mainly shit posting and bullying my friends publicly. And I think I'm on TikTok, but that's also shit posting. So it just depends on what kind of vibe you want. But that's where you can find me.
And I am Ryan, aka the Mestizo Mystic on Instagram, or just at Mestizo Mystic on Twitter, and the Mestizo Mystic on TikTok? I'm like blanking on my handle for that one, but
we'll find you.
We'll find you.
There's not too many Mestizo Mystics. I'm iconic. I'm the only one.
That's true. That's exactly right. You're the only one, and that's the only one I'll accept.
Not the 5 imposter accounts going around right now, you know.
Oh, goodness me. I still haven't gotten one, so I don't think I've been initiated as an Instagram witch. But it's bound to happen.
It'll come soon enough.
It's bound to happen.
It's coming.
And with that said, we will see you guys on our next Unholy Communion.
Until next time.
See you season 2. Bye!